The month you finally nailed your budget is statistically the month before your worst spending week. Not because you failed, because you succeeded and your brain recorded that success as a threat. You know the cycle. There's the version of you who downloads the app, builds the spreadsheet, says no to the dinner, the shoes, the impulse buy you saw for 3 seconds on Instagram. You feel it, that quiet pride of being in control. You go a week, 2 weeks, sometimes a full month without breaking. You think, this time is different. This time I finally have the discipline. And then something small happens. A rough Tuesday, a friend's birthday, one moment where you're tired and depleted and the checkout button is right there. And suddenly it's not just the birthday dinner, it's the jacket you've been eyeing, the streaming service you canceled 3 months ago, and somehow a blender you don't need. You sit with the bank notification and think, I was doing so well. What is wrong with me? Here's the answer no personal finance channel is going to give you. Nothing is wrong with you, but everything is wrong with how you've been thinking about spending habits and the role willpower actually plays in them. What just happened wasn't a failure of discipline. It was the predictable result of a physics problem being treated as a character problem. And once you understand the physics, the solution becomes obvious. Stay with me, because the third piece of this changes where the problem actually lives. Let's start with the thing nobody wants to say out loud, because it sounds like an excuse. Willpower is not a character trait, it's a fuel tank. Every time you say no to a purchase through sheer force of intention, you pull from that tank. The tank depletes across the day. It depletes harder when you're stressed, sleep-deprived, or socially overwhelmed. And here's what makes impulse spending so difficult to understand from the inside. You're not just losing fuel, you're building pressure. Think of it this way. Every suppressed spending urge is heat added to a sealed system. The lid holds for a while, but the first law of thermodynamics doesn't care about your savings goals. Energy doesn't disappear, it redirects. The longer the lid stays on, the more intense the release when it finally comes. Your most disciplined weeks don't neutralize the pressure, they concentrate it. The rebound isn't a failure of character, it's physics. Your brain doesn't speak the language of budgets, it speaks the language of survival. And your survival brain, the same operating system your ancestors ran 50,000 years ago when food was scarce and uncertainty meant death, does not experience a strict money diet as a financial strategy. It experiences it as deprivation, as scarcity, as a signal that resources are being withheld from a body that might need them soon. When a 50,000-year-old nervous system detects scarcity, it doesn't think I'll wait until next month. It fires the amygdala and says, acquire now, acquire urgently, before the scarcity worsens. This is hardwired, it's not a weakness. It's the same mechanism that kept your ancestors alive through famine. The problem is that it has no idea you're trying to pay off a credit card. It only knows the lid is tight, the heat is building, and something needs to release. This is why dieters binge after their cleanest weeks. Why people who quit social media go back harder after a month away. And why paycheck-to-paycheck cycles are so hard to break, not because of income, but because the money psychology underneath the cycle keeps reloading the pressure. The worst part, every time you shame yourself for the rebound, you add more psychological weight to the next restrictive phase. You tighten the lid harder. You add more heat. You're not fixing the problem. You're scheduling the next explosion and handing yourself the blame when it arrives on schedule. There's a concept in behavioral economics called ego depletion. The short version, self-control draws from a shared cognitive resource, and every decision resisting the snack, holding back in the meeting, declining the impulse buy in the checkout line costs something. By late Friday afternoon, after a week of exercising financial discipline, your willpower account isn't low, it's in overdraft. And a brain running on cognitive overdraft doesn't make money decisions, it makes survival decisions. In a consumer economy that was specifically engineered by behavioral scientists to reach you in exactly that state, through targeted notifications, time-limited offers, one-click checkout, and social comparison feeds. You are walking into a lopsided war every single time you rely on discipline alone. You're not losing to your budget. You're losing to an asymmetric fight you didn't know you'd entered. Now here's the part that reframes everything. The people who consistently build savings, not the ones who occasionally white-knuckle a good month, but the ones who actually accumulate wealth across years. They are not more disciplined than you. Research comparing high savers to low savers consistently identifies one differentiating factor: not willpower scores, not self-control levels, not even income once you control for it. Environment design. High savers live in financial environments where the default behavior is already the right behavior, where the easy choice and the correct choice are the same choice. They don't experience discipline as a daily battle because they engineered the battlefield so the battle doesn't start. They didn't fight their impulse spending harder. They made fighting it unnecessary. They didn't put a better lid on the pressure cooker. They turned off the burner. Here are the 3 places in your financial environment where the pressure builds, and most people never see it happening. The first is decision proximity. Every time a money decision lives in your active awareness, every time you have to consciously choose whether to spend, you're burning willpower from a tank that was already running low when you woke up. The fix isn't more attention, it's automation. Money that moves before you see it doesn't trigger the scarcity alarm. Your nervous system cannot restrict what it never registered as available. Automated savings aren't just convenient. They're neurologically invisible to the survival brain. The second is punishment framing. The average budget reads like a restraining order on your own life, a list of things you can't have. Your brain processes that as deprivation, and deprivation builds pressure. A redesigned financial environment removes categories of no and replaces them with categories of already handled. When savings, bills, and fixed costs move automatically on payday, what remains in your spending account isn't restricted money. It's guilt-free money. The impulse spending that follows isn't a rebound. It's just spending with a pressure valve already built in. The third is identity friction. This one is quieter and more corrosive than the other 2 combined. Every time you identify as someone who is trying to be better with money, you define your current state as defective. And defective people, psychologically, don't maintain systems. They abandon them the moment the defective version of themselves shows up. The environment shifts that stick aren't designed for the disciplined, future-oriented, fully rested version of you. They're designed for the tired, stressed, depleted Friday afternoon version who just survived a week and needs to feel something. Systems that require you to be better than you currently are will fail every time the current version of you shows up. And that version shows up every Friday afternoon, without fail. Here's the uncomfortable truth sitting at the center of all of this. If you've been trying to fix a physics problem with a character solution, if you've been adding willpower to a system specifically designed to exhaust willpower, then every month you felt like a failure wasn't a month you failed. It was a month you ran a broken experiment and took the blame for the results. The pressure cooker doesn't care how committed you are. It only cares how much heat is inside it. And every restrictive money diet, every month of white-knuckling without changing the source of the pressure, just keeps turning up the heat. So what actually works? 3 environment architecture shifts, not because they require more of you, but because they require less. Remove the decision entirely. Set up a transfer on payday that moves your savings target before it ever hits your checking account, not as a category, not as a bill, as something that never existed in your spendable world. The scarcity signal never fires if the money was never counted as available. Designed for the impulsive version of yourself. Stop building financial systems for the future you. Build them for the tired, depleted, emotionally drained version who just wants to feel something tonight. Give that version a specific, pre-designated amount that requires zero guilt, zero negotiation. When impulse spending has a designated home in your architecture, it stops being a leak. It becomes a controlled release valve, pressure managed, not suppressed. Add friction where the survival brain tends to take over. There are predictable moments when cognitive function drops and impulse spending rises, waiting in lines, late-night scrolling, browsing after emotional events. You cannot discipline your way through those moments, but you can remove the ease. Delete stored payment information from apps. Add a 24-hour pause on purchases over a certain amount. Unsubscribe from sale alerts. These aren't restrictions. They're speed bumps between the impulse and the transaction, just enough for the rational brain to catch up. You're not eliminating desire, you're redesigning where it lands. The question was never, do you have enough financial discipline? The question was always, who designed your financial environment? Because the people who broke the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, the ones who built lasting money habits that didn't collapse under stress, they didn't beat their primitive brain. They stopped fighting it. They looked at the same 50,000-year-old survival hardware and built a system that works with it instead of against it. The pressure cooker didn't change. They just took it off the stove. What would your financial life look like if you stopped trying to override your nervous system and started engineering around it instead? Think about that. Leave an answer in the comments. And if this shifted something in how you're seeing impulse spending and money habits, hit subscribe, because the next video pulls apart another thing personal finance got completely wrong.